Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to this broadcast. I am Sonia Keeve, and I am the CEO and founder of Sisters with the Voice Podcast Network. And what I do is I help women entrepreneurs get unstuck from thinking about starting a podcast to building, launching, and monetizing a podcast in just 30 days. And so today we are going to talk about a topic for all of my aspiring and seasoned podcasters. How do you measure your podcast success? Now, for those that maybe you have just launched your podcast and you are super excited, you are just bursting at the seams with the fact that you just launched your podcast. And for those that have done that, congratulations for entering into this amazing world of podcasting. Or perhaps you're someone who is maybe you're more seasoned. It's been a couple of months, even a couple of years, and you've launched your podcast show. My question to you is, how do you measure how well your podcast show is doing and how you are doing as a podcast host? See, one of the things when you want to consider, especially when you're launching a podcast, is we've got to measure how well our show is doing. And do you have tools in place to help you to do that? But I do understand that success for everyone is not one and the same. So some people would say that success for my podcast is measured in the amount of downloads I have. And that's great. But my question to you is, do you fully understand and know, wow, is it the number of the downloads that you have, or is it possibly the time frame? And the reason why I want to bring this up is because there have been some stats recently out there that have measured to give podcasters kind of a understanding of a pulse on how your show is doing. And so one of the things that you want to look at is when you're launching or dropping your episode, you should get some stats on your show in that first 7 days, because that period is so critical in really understanding, one, is the content that I'm delivering, is it resonating with my ideal audience? And two, the kind of reach that I'm getting. Because as many people enter into the podcast space, one of the main questions I get, especially as it relates to monetization, is how do I get sponsors? And a lot of times that sponsorships are one of the hardest tasks to obtain, especially when you're coming into the gate brand new into the space of podcasting. But perhaps you've been doing it for a while and you still struggle to get sponsorships. And a lot of times you're looking at your numbers and you're saying, hey, well, I've got 2,000 to 3,000 downloads. But how many downloads is that per episode? And two, what type of reach are you getting? Because sponsors, when they are looking to partner with you, they're tapping into your audience and to see if your audience will be in alignment with what they have to help them get more reach and get their products and services out there. And so as you're talking about measuring your success, you want to do some fine tuning and start with just looking at the first 7 days when you release an episode. And sidebar, that brings up this point. Do you have metrics that you can even speak to that? Because many times podcasters put podcast shows out there, but if you ask them, well, what type of reach do you have? Because especially if you're looking to have guests to come on your show, they want to know, if my presence coming onto your show, is that going to get me more notoriety, get me in front of more people? And if you don't even have a clue or an idea of how your show is being received and measured, that is a point where you right now probably need to stop this video and go look to see what your metrics are. So definitely look at what are your shows doing in the first 7 days. And just to give you kind of a glimpse into our world of podcasting, it's been said that if within that first 7 days for that first episode that you drop, if you have 26 plus downloads within that first 7 days, then your podcast show is falling within the top 50% of all podcast shows in the world. Now, statistics have shown that as of 2021, there are over 2 million podcast shows out there. And so if your show is falling in the top 50%, kudos to you. Kudos to you. If you have 72 plus downloads in that first 7 days, then you're moving up the echelon and you're now in the top 25% of all podcast shows in the world. If you got 231 downloads within that first 7 days, you are now in the top 10%. 539 downloads or more, you're in the top five. And for the top 1% podcast shows in the world, if you've got 3,062 downloads in that first 7 days, you are in the top echelon of the top 1% of podcasters in the world. And so this is a great indicator for you to really go back and see, well, how my show is doing. And full transparency, I went and did the same thing just to see, when I launched in 2018, kind of where did I fall when I was in that first 7 days? And I was excited to find out and know that I was in the top 50% of podcasts in the world. So that was a great indication and segue for me. And since that time, I've continued to grow and move up the echelon. And so you definitely want to measure that success by understanding your stats and where you fall into that arena. Now, another thing, second point in terms of really measuring success, perhaps you're not really concerned about the downloads. And that's cool. Because I'm going to tell you, when I first got into podcasting, I really was not focused so much on the downloads as I was focused on the impact of how people were receiving the content and were they being inspired by it. Because my podcast show is entitled Inspiring Nations with Sonia Keeve. And so I was more concerned about the global reach of getting my message out there in a global space. And so I was more concerned about impact, and perhaps that could be a goal for you. Maybe you want more impact and you want to make more connections. That can absolutely put you in that space of having more impact. And of course, when I wanted to understand more impact, to see my global reach, guess what? I had stats to show me where I was having the most impact. And I can tell you, 3 months into Inspiring Nations, I was heard across the United States and in my first 3 countries in the world. And that was exciting for me to understand that, because that was a goal for me. I wanted to have global reach when I launched Inspiring Nations. And now we're in 164 plus countries. And that could not have happened if I had not set a goal to understand, when I'm launching a show, what is the overall goal of that show? What do I want this platform to do? And so you'll need to answer that question for yourself. What do you want your show to do? Do you want more impact, or do you want more downloads, or perhaps both? That's the beauty of this platform. You can decide and set those goals for yourself. Lastly, perhaps measuring the success for your podcast show is the collaborations that you make. Again, this was another goal for me. I wanted to collaborate not only with other podcasters, but other thought leaders, other inspirational people, other entrepreneurs, thinkers, speakers, authors. And guess what? It allowed me to connect with such a wide net of people. Because when you are launching your own podcast, or you have a podcast show, remember, this is not a platform that you'll just have impact with just your community. You're going to have a global presence. But you can't have that if you don't know where you want to go. It's like going on a trip and deciding, okay, I'm gonna get in my car and I want to go to, and you don't have a place to go to. Guess what? You're gonna be driving around wasting gas, and gas is too high these days. So you definitely want to plot out your roadmap when you are launching a podcast, or perhaps you're a seasoned podcaster and you're not getting the reach that you're having. What are the goals that you're setting to measure the success of the show? Because it's not enough to just broadcast and deliver your content, because guess what, your time and your talent is valuable. And so you don't want to just have this podcast platform and it not reach anybody. Sometimes it happens when you have certain shows. I can tell you there are some of my earlier shows, it didn't have as much impact, but I also understood that was because I didn't set some intentional goals. And so once I set some intentional goals about how I measure success, then I started to see the impact and started to have more reach. But you got to set some goals. So before you even launch a podcast, ask yourself, what is the end result that I want to achieve as a result of launching my show? Do I want more impact? Do I want more downloads? Do I want more collaborations? Or fourth point, do I want to make some money? And I'm pretty sure a lot of you are like, yes. But guess what? Don't focus, don't come into this platform solely focusing on making money. Being a podcaster is the long game. If you have impact, if you help people be able to take it to the next level with the problems that they have and you're the solution, guess what? The money is going to come. But if you come into this business saying, you know what, I want to make money right off the bat, I'm hate to burst your bubble, but you're going to be sorely disappointed. So I hope that you really take the time to go back to the drawing board and write down, how will you measure your podcast show's success? And then set some intentional goals, either monthly, quarterly, yearly. And then start putting some action steps behind how you're going to achieve those goals, so that when someone comes to you and says, hey, I would love to be a guest on your show, but could you tell me a little bit more about your platform and what you do, and how it can, um, really help me elevate my game? Or even better, how can you as the podcast host elevate your game? Because guess what? This is your platform. Then you'll have some measurements of success, some goals that are attainable that you can speak to and not be caught off guard. So thank you so much for watching this broadcast. I hope that you'll take these points into consideration to help you measure your success, and keep grinding, keep being the amazing creatives that you all are in this podcast arena. And lastly, I would like to invite anyone who is interested in learning more about how to launch your podcast. You can reach me on all social media channels at Sonia Keeve. I am the CEO and founder of Sisters with a Voice Podcast Network, and I help women entrepreneurs build, launch, and monetize a podcast in just 30 days. So keep being creative, keep believing in the brand that you are building, and measure your success so that you have the pulse check on your business today. Take care. Bye bye.